Ratings agency S&P Global has downgraded its outlook on South Africa to stable from positive, citing the intense rolling blackouts and other infrastructural constraints. The agency says also worrying is the slow implementation of structural reforms and delays in dealing with governance and performance of state-owned companies. It says contingent liabilities from SOEs pose continued downside risks to the country's fiscal and debt position. The rating agency has affirmed South Africa's long-term foreign and local currency debt ratings at BB- and BB respectively. The local economy contracted by 1.3% in the fourth quarter of last year, more than market expectations, mainly due to the electricity crisis. Responding to the move by S&P Global, government says it's taking urgent measures to reduce load shedding in the short term. It says it's also in the process of transforming the sector through market reforms to achieve long-term energy security. In a statement, government says other reforms, especially in freight rail, are underway. It says fiscal consolidation measures have allowed it room to take on part of the Eskom debt and to make provisions for other pressing expenditure pressures. So how concerned should South Africans be about this latest development? I'm joined by Dr Iraj Abedian. He's the Chief Executive at Pan-African Investment and Research Services. Very good afternoon, Iraj. Thank you very much for joining us. So a lot of negative headwinds have hit South Africa's economy of late, the more intense bouts of load shedding, and then, of course, the recent decision by the Financial Action Task Force to grey-list the country, among other issues. Are you surprised by S&P Global's position, and ultimately, what does it mean or signal to us as South Africans?
Thank you very much for inviting me, and greetings to our viewers. I'm not surprised at all because, as you just mentioned, there are some real obstacles to South African economic growth. We all know about electricity, and there isn't really any light at the end of the tunnel. The latest cabinet reshuffle also didn't do much good for this particular prospect, not just with regard to electricity, but also remember our rail capacity is 45% of what it was. Our ports are operating at really terrible capacity level. I've been told Cape Town is operating at 35% of its capacity. We've seen the trucks going from South Africa to Maputo because Transnet rail freight doesn't manage its capacity, and its capacity has fallen to 50%, and so on and so forth. So I think all along, whatever aspect of the economy that we look at, over and above the energy that has become crippling, and governments seem to be stuck in doing something about it other than talking about it, the other part of infrastructure is also falling apart, and that effectively reduces the ability of the economy to be able to produce, to export, to earn, create jobs, and at the same time, this discourages, if not disappoints, very much discourages the business community in terms of what they can and cannot invest. And that is at a time that the economy has got the capacity and the potential, but its potential cannot be unlocked because of these bottlenecks on infrastructure primarily, and the government year after year is not coming up with an effective solution.
Iraj, I want to touch on something that you were saying earlier in your response. You touched on the new cabinet, or the newish cabinet that was announced to us earlier this week. It sounds as though you don't have much confidence in it being able to spearhead some of the pressing challenges that we have. Just expand on that a little bit, and particularly around the energy issue.
See, the cabinet hasn't changed when it comes to economic policies. State enterprises is the same, Department of Energy, the same minister, Trade and Industry, the same minister. These are the ministries that need to coordinate their interventions and their strategic plans to implement, not to disagree with each other. Now we have on top of it a Minister of Electricity, yes, a very capable man, very energetic, but what? He cannot do magic. Rails and ports and so on and so forth requires executives, not ministerial, not political interventions, executives who have the capacity, the knowledge, and the politics must stand behind them, not the other way around. Politicians and the cabinet as we have it really have been an obstacle to economic growth, and the reshuffle did not touch any of those. And the president's excuse that because next year there's an election, we must limp along until elections come and go is really a very lame and unacceptable and not happy as far as the market is concerned. That's not the way to deal with emergency issues of rail capacity, port capacity, water capacity, and energy, and so on and so forth. And of course, yes, there was a good interventions on the energy side in the budget with respect to the subsidies that the government offers to get off the grid, but that is also partial. That is limited for a year or two, and it's not expansive enough. It is not substantial enough, and that doesn't go far enough to accelerate or demonstrate the urgency that these particular obstacles require. And S&P makes reference to that.
Yeah, no, I think you've hit the nail on the head there in terms of the expansiveness of those incentives, because of course it's about those who can afford, you know, solar installations, even if you're getting a break from government. One last question before I let you go. Can we now expect other ratings agencies to also change their outlook on the South African economy, or worse still, change the actual credit rating?
Look, whether they do or not, remember, we are already a junk grade. So whether you are under the water, whether you are a meter down or 5 meters, doesn't really make much of a difference. And the South African economy at the moment is under the water, and there isn't enough urgent interventions, apart from talk and the statements, which does nothing. There aren't enough interventions with haste that this economy needs to pull it from under the water and then enable it to breathe and grow again.
All right, Iraj, thank you very much for your time there. That was Iraj Abedian. He's from Pan African Investment and Research Services.